Good evening. I'm Kalamazoo Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain, and welcome to tonight's Kalamazoo City Commission meeting of June 7th, 2021. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the City of Kalamazoo's Facebook page, as well as the City of Kalamazoo's YouTube channel. You can listen to tonight's meeting by calling area code 269-552-6425 and entering meeting ID number 914-9489-6002 when prompted. And you can also leave a public comment for tonight's public meeting by calling area code 269-226-6573. And with that, I'll turn the meeting over to Mayor David Anderson.
Thank you once again, Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain. I appreciate it. I want to call this meeting of Monday, June 7th, 2021 of the Kalamazoo City Commission to order as we're finishing out the day here with a bunch of sunshine after getting a little bit of much needed rain. Clerk Moss, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Cunningham.
Here in the great city of Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Hess.
Here in Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Knott.
Here, Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Pradel.
Present in the city of Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Urban.
Present in the famous city of Kalamazoo.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Here in the city of Kalamazoo.
Mayor Anderson.
Here in the city of Kalamazoo. Thank you, Clerk Moss. For our opening ceremony tonight, we are honored to have Pastor Kenny Bryant here from the Kalamazoo Community Church to provide our invocation. Pastor Bryant.
Hey, before I pray, just want to say that I'm sort of a newbie to the area. I've only been here this month 2 years. And just let me say, this is a wonderful area. I'm glad I'm here. I came from Virginia. No doubt y'all are part of what makes it great. So thanks for your efforts and your leadership. I appreciate it. Shall we pray? Almighty God, we thank you for the gift of government. We thank you for those who govern. God, grant these tonight that are gathered, grant them the ability to lead in a way that is wise, prudent, and profitable for the people of Kalamazoo and for your honor. Give them the skill and wisdom necessary to govern well. We also ask for your blessings upon the employees of this municipality. May they be faithful and may they be empowered by you as they carry out their duties. And God, we remember those in our community that put their lives on the line every day, our firefighters, our police officers, and others. Father, we would ask that you would protect them and that they would work well to keep our community safe. In the name of Almighty God, amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Brian. I appreciate that. Commissioners, you have before you the agenda for tonight's meeting. Are there any changes that anyone on the commission would like to see? Commissioner Urban.
Is it at this point, can I ask for an item on the consent agenda to be removed?
Most certainly, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to have a discussion about the biodiesel contract.
So that's item G3 on the consent agenda.
Yes, that's the
Commissioner
one.
Urban.
Yes, sir.
So that would be moved to the F regular agenda.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other changes, commissioners? All right. Next is communications. City Manager Ritzma.
Thank you, Your Honor. I announced this at the Committee of the Whole meeting at 5. We will be having a virtual City Commission retreat this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Again, via Zoom, and look forward to following up from our retreat in March and talking more about the priorities that were identified by the commission, and look forward to that discussion. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Next is the opportunity for public comments. Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, do we have any public comments?
Yes, sir, we do. We have a few of them and we'll begin playing them right now.
Hi, this is Mark Sloan. Somebody elicited complaints about the park rules for Bronson Park, and I want you to know, as a downtown resident, 471 West South Street, I ask you not only to keep the park rules, but to make sure that you enforce them. Remember what we had before. The park is to be shared by everybody and not just dominated by people who camp out here in the summer. So keep up the good work. Do not be swayed by public opinion of out-of-towners. Thank you.
Hello to the City Commission. My name is Jeremy Turpinning. I am a resident of Kalamazoo in the great neighborhood of The Vine. I'm calling to sort of address the issue of property maintenance companies that are unable to meet their maintenance goals and what efforts the city, or what teeth the city actually has to hold them accountable for their actions. I've been dealing specifically with AIM for over 2.5 years now on a property that is completely unwieldy. It has never been certified, and the city has really no recourse, or seems to have no recourse, for adjusting or making sure the behaviors are taken care of. Dealing on numerous occasions with KDPS, with all of the neighbors, and trying to work with this property maintenance company has resulted in zero change of the behavior. If anything, it's just gotten worse because the people that are there feel that they're now somehow immune, or they have no responsibility to the neighborhood in which they live. I have called upon the city commission, or the individual commissioners, to sort of take up this fight, and I want to bring it to a public forum because the excuse COVID is a little bit played out, and I think we should be, as a community and as a city, more responsible and actually dealing with the behaviors of people that are not properly attributing themselves to a community and not following the law. I would highly suggest that we use the teeth that we've got to bite into the problem and actually take care of it. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a great evening.
Good evening. My name is Dick Schultz, and I live between 9th Street and Stadium Drive. My kids all went to Kalamazoo Central. I believe I'm probably in Ostemo Township, though. But I'm calling regarding the current state of homelessness. I was somewhat involved this winter in helping raise some funds for sleeping bag coats. And what I'm concerned about, most of all, is two things: the affordable housing. If we need to try to provide affordable housing as rapidly as we possibly can. I've met many homeless people that have the Section 8, but they do not have access to affordable housing, which is not news to anyone. But the way I see it, action on that is critical, but also action on transitional housing is critical so we can avoid the catastrophe that we had last January and February when it really got cold. I'm hopeful that funds can be allocated for traditional housing. I know that Conestoga huts are one possibility, pallet shelters another, but I think that we need to get on those. We need to access the money. The only thing I'm certain is that if we don't do something different, it's going to be the same, if not worse, this coming winter. So I'm urging all people that have any influence or power to take positive steps to move into action right away to try to resolve this crisis in our land and in our country, in our county. I thank you for your time and attention, and thank you for all the efforts that have been made to this point to solve this problem of our unhoused citizens. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Albert Dixon, and I live in Kalamazoo. I'm a co-chair of the Isaac Anti-Racism Task Force. We are grateful, gratefully thankful for our elected officials, candidates, and law enforcement officials who participated in our October 22nd, 2020 public meeting to build this partnership with us, while committing to take action to work towards racial justice and building the beloved community. We also recognize and honor the anti-racism work that has already been set in motion by organizations, institutions, and public leaders. We will continue to support that work and seek to expand it through the acts requested that night in partnership with our community. We also believe these acts will benefit our community, law enforcement, and public officials by enabling deeper communication and a shared understanding of systemic racism by promoting greater trust, improving collaboration, and developing anti-racist policies, practices, and relationships. We understand this is ongoing work and look forward to keeping all continually updated. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maggie Adams, and I live in the city of Kalamazoo, and I'm a member of Isaac's Anti-Racism Task Force. Isaac held our 2020 public meeting on October 22nd and are excited to work collaboratively to build a culture of trust and legitimacy between our law enforcement, criminal justice, and our community, as exemplified in Pillar 1 of the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. A special thank you to the Director of Kalamazoo Defender, Josh Hilgart, and Prosecutor Jeff Getting for meeting with us to answer questions around what is already being done in their respective departments and organizations in the areas of anti-racism work, education, training, wellness, trust, and transparency through the reviewing and answering of detailed questions. These questions focused on Pillar 1, building trust and legitimacy, Pillar 5, training and education, and Pillar 6, wellness and safety. From these discussions, we are excited for the possible and upcoming workshops or public sessions that Kalamazoo Defender and the Prosecutor's Office can plan in order to share this information with the community. We are looking forward to doing the same with other participants of these asks. From Isaac, we thank you.
Jeff Messer, city resident. Here we go again, another 100% virtual meeting. The commission is now in its 15th month of disenfranchising citizens who can't access meetings in their current format and severely restricting participation by those who can. This is no longer about protecting public health. Everyone who wants to be vaccinated has had ample opportunity, 2 months and 8 days to do so. This is now about the city commission having grown addicted to the extreme convenience of 100% virtual meetings and not wanting to give that convenience or their mute buttons up. Vice Mayor Griffin claims to be dodging gunfire during meetings. Commissioner Knott claims to be overwhelmed by the stench coming from the Kalamazoo River. A reasonable person would seek the secure and stink-free environment of City Hall with an armed guard in the form of a plainclothes police detective. Since July 2020, on a half dozen occasions, I have offered the commission 4 alternatives to the current format: hybrid meetings, outdoor meetings, meetings in a larger venue, and meetings utilizing multiple rooms in City Hall. Capacity isn't an issue. I've been to a number of meetings over the past 9 years where 100% capacity wasn't enough and people have had to overflow to the community room, hallway, and lobby. So we've successfully dealt with capacity limits before. What excuse is the commission going to use after July 1 when all indoor capacity limits are lifted by Governor Whitmer? The public is partly to blame for this situation. You are not calling into these meetings and complaining about your disenfranchisement. I fear the commission is going to continue 100% virtual meetings until at least August 31st, when their current emergency declaration expires. Please don't let that happen. Please let the commission know your displeasure about them continuing to have meeting restrictions identical to the ones in place in April 2020. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ashante Collins. I live in Kalamazoo County, and I'm an intern of Isaac's Anti-Racism Task Force. Isaac held our 2020 public meeting on October 22nd and offered and asked to U.S. state, city, and county elected officials to commit to attend the Anti-Racism, Equity, Empowerment, and Accountability workshop facilitated by Reverend Katoya Roberts from Wisconsin. We hosted our third and final offering on May 20th. A special thank you to those who attended this final session: Vice Mayor Patrice Griffin, City Commissioner Eric Cunningham, County Commissioner Veronica McKizak, County Treasurer Thomas Whitener, and Representative Christine Morse. This is not meant to serve as the box checking opportunity, but instead the purpose is to start having intentional discussions and self-reflections about how we ensure anti-racism and accountability are always applied in our governing actions. After reviewing elected officials' evaluations, we read that participants wanted to go deeper. So we deepened the accountability section for our workshops number 2 and 3. We have encouraged workshop participants to take time to reflect and answer these questions and to share with colleagues. We are always happy to touch base for dialogue as well. For those elected officials who have already attended, again, we want to offer a gentle reminder. We are asking that you share publicly and verbally with your constituents your own learnings, takeaways, and commitments around anti-racism and accountability. This is leaning into accountability, anti-racism, and transparency. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shona Espinoza, and I live in Kalamazoo City. I'm just calling because I'm just over the not caring about what's happening in Kalamazoo. David Anderson, Jim Ritzema, a few of y'all on the commission, y'all literally do not do y'all job. Y'all cause harm to the community. Y'all see all the violence. Y'all see all the races. Y'all see all the struggles that people are having. Kalamazoo is not affordable. Kalamazoo is not safe. Kalamazoo is racist. Do your job. Y'all are coming up for election this November. We are not going to reelect those that are not doing their job. David Anderson, I have no idea why you decided to run again for mayor, because you do not do nothing for the city of Kalamazoo but sit up there on the commissioners meeting and sometimes want to give us a history election. History. Oh my God, y'all is just so frustrating me. Then you come out for these dumb photo ops just every single time you want a photo op or be on the camera. Dude, that's not your job. Your job is to make sure that Kalamazoo is okay. Protect your citizens. Stop all the racist things that are going on. Just do your job.
Mr. Mayor, that was the last call.
There we go. Thank you, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain. I appreciate that. Next is our consent agenda. City Manager Ritzma.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 23 items this evening. One is being pulled to the regular agenda, and then one at the end is being held over until June 21st, 2021. So first is the approval of an extension of the asphalt paving materials contract with Reith Riley Construction Company in the amount of $996,000. Next is the approval of a one-year contract extension with Wolverine Solutions Group for utility billing, printing, and mailing services in the amount of $125,905.12. Next is the approval of a sole source purchase order with Vista Analytical Laboratories in the amount of $170,423 for PFAS testing as part of the Kalamazoo Battle Creek International Airport PFAS response event. Next is the approval of a contract with Peters Construction for the 2021 Sun Valley Drive Improvement Project in the amount of $655,541.12. Next is the approval of a professional services agreement with Hurley and Stewart in the amount of $110,000 for the Sun Valley Drive Improvements Engineering Construction Services. Next is the approval and acceptance of an easement with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy for a parcel owned by the city of Kalamazoo in conjunction with the Sun Valley Reconstruction Project. Next is the adoption of a resolution confirming the 2021 assessment roll. Next is the adoption of a resolution approving the request of the Downtown Development Authority to levy a tax rate of 1.9638 mils. Next is the adoption of a resolution granting a payment in lieu of taxes to Harrison Circle Limited Dividend Housing Association Limited Partnership for Harrison Circle located at 525 East Ransom Street. Next is the adoption of a resolution approving the Ninth Amendment to the city's revised brownfield plan to support redevelopment of the site at 619 Porter and 315 East Frank Streets. Next is the adoption of a resolution approving the Second Amendment to the scattered site infill housing brownfield plan for scattered site infill projects at 11 parcels in Vine, East Side, and North Side neighborhoods to support home ownership opportunities. Next is the approval and acceptance of a revocable license with Eccles LLC to utilize portions of the Water Pump Station 3 property for vehicular parking. Next is the approval of an exchange agreement for interduct utilities between the city and ACD.net. Next is the authorization for the city manager to sign an authorization for a change in the standard lighting contract with Consumers Energy. Next is the approval of a snow melt system easement with 234 West Cedar LLC and Park at Cedar LLC for the 400 Rose Street Phase 2 project. Next is the approval of a sidewalk easement with 234 West Cedar LLC and Park at Cedar LLC for the 400 Rose Phase 2 project. Next is the approval of an encroachment easement with 234 West Cedar LLC and Park at Cedar LLC for the 400 Rose Street Phase 2 project. Next is the approval of a request from the Kalamazoo Growlers to publicly display fireworks at Homer Stryker Field on June 18, July 2, July 3, August 7, and August 13, 2021. Next is the approval of the following reappointments to boards and commissions. The reappointment of Sydney Ellis to the Water System Advisory Council for a term expiring on December 31, 2023. Next is the reappointment of Vern Johnson to the Water System Advisory Council for a term expiring on December 31, 2022. Next, the reappointment of Nancy Stoddard to the Water System Advisory Council for a term expiring on December 31, 2023. And finally, the reappointment of Steve Walsh to the Water System Advisory Council for a term expiring on January 1st, 2022. Next is the approval of the mayor's appointment of Rachel Baird to the Economic Development Corporation and Brownfield Redevelopment Authority boards of directors for a term expiring on March 31, 2025. And finally, approval of the sale of 738 Harrison Street to Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services for the price of $500.
Thank you, City Manager Ritzma. So commissioners, the requested action is to approve items 1 and 2, and then 4 through 22. Postpone item 23 until June 21st, 2021, and authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Cunningham, supported by Commissioner Hess. Clerk Moss, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners. The items on the consent agenda are approved. We now have 3 items on the regular agenda. City Manager Ritzma.
Yes. Item G3, approval of a contract with Kalamazoo Oil for a pilot term contract for biodiesel in the amount of $125,000. And Your Honor, I'd like to ask our Director of Public Services, James Baker, to give a brief overview of what this is and what it may mean for the city of Kalamazoo.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma, and welcome, Director Baker.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, City Manager, Vice Mayor, City Commission. First off, I'd like to thank Manager Ritzma for his leadership, vision, and support in both recognizing and honoring the sustainability plan and a community goal of environmental responsibility. It's with these clearly defined goals and objectives that Public Services has set out working with our technical staff to begin working to identify the feasibility of running a lower emissions fuel in the existing City of Kalamazoo fleet. Biodiesel was identified as a potential alternative fuel source, which could have wide-ranging impacts to improving air quality, including the estimated reduction of carbon emissions by over 20 tons annually. Early biodiesel implementation in the market across Michigan 10 to 15 years ago was really challenged by quality and performance inconsistencies. Many fleets tried this early on and were challenged with operational readiness issues. Staff, knowing this, reached out and worked with professionals within the petroleum industry to develop an advanced set of specifications that would really mirror premium diesel standards. This was a very challenging specification. We received great interest and support from many prospective bidders. We had excellent turnout at our pre-bid meeting and saw a lot of support all throughout the bidding process. Ultimately, it was Kalamazoo Oil, our current local fuel supplier, and Kalamazoo Small Business since 1947, who was able to come together working with Citgo, ExxonMobil, and an additive supplier in Indiana to meet our product specifications. This fuel will be transported from East Chicago into Kalamazoo. And currently, at this time, there isn't a biodiesel presence in Michigan. Our pilot includes laboratory analysis, a comprehensive quality assurance and quality control program. The equipment, engines, and vehicles that are selected to run in the pilot will be evaluated against the same engine platforms running on conventional petroleum diesel. I'd also like to thank City of Portage team. They're going to be participating in this pilot as well. The City of Portage Public Works Department will be coming up to Stockbridge and fueling their equipment up there as well as we work out to work through this pilot. Really, our goal here is to run this pilot for a 1-year time period. We'll run the equipment through every kind of temperature performance range that we would expect equipment to operate in. We'll identify any issues. If there are issues, we'll be able to run those issues down and create a problem-solving mechanism to respond to that. So we'll hopeful that we'll be coming back next year to go full scale with biodiesel implementation. Thank you. I can take any questions.
Thank you, Director Baker. Are there questions? Yeah, Commissioner Urban. You're muted, Commissioner.
I have a question. If this is biodiesel, why are we dealing with Citgo and Exxon? What's their role in this?
You know, that is a great question. And, you know, really to answer it, I kind of want to talk through the progression of biodiesel in the market. Early on, 10, 15 years ago, I'm sure everybody heard of somebody that's tinkered with their car. Somebody's running French fry oil or something like that. And, that was kind of the early stage of it. There's folks that can make this. It's in kind of small scale production abilities. Several years ago, there was a change in the fuel market in terms of sulfur specifications for diesel fuel. And that changed from a 500 part per million sulfur down to 15 part per million sulfur resulted in some changes in the refineries. Those changes resulted early stage, some diesel fuel that lacks some lubricity properties in it. And so refiners at that time had to develop a lubricity add package. When we get to the base specifications of diesel fuel, what is diesel fuel? And you break it down into its main components, it's really just isoparaffins, paraffins, esters, and aromatic compounds. When we look at soybean-derived biodiesel, it's essentially soybeans that are processed into a fatty acid methyl ester. We can then take that fatty acid methyl ester and replace it nearly 1-for-1 with those esters that are already in the fuel. So the fuel refiners discovered that it would restore a lot of those lubricity compounds and that lubricity of the fuel that was lost in that desulfurization process. And it became of an interest for the large petroleum refiners to embark on this endeavor themselves. So we now have a refiner that's making the biodiesel, partnering with ag agencies that are BQ 9000 certified. That's a certification process that manufacturers go through to certify their products, when those soybeans go through that process, so that they're bought up and blended by the refiners themselves in the refinery, so they can be shipped out as a final fuel product.
Interesting. Thank you.
I would say that is an answer that can only be fully appreciated by a chemist, Commissioner Urban. So I hope that was very, very helpful.
Well,
Other questions for Director Baker? Yeah, Commissioner Hess.
Or fully articulated by an engineer. So thank you, Director Baker, for that. And I want to thank you from the Environmental Concerns Committee. And I sit on the ECC as in my role as commissioner. And so I know that they're applauding us this evening for this start toward biodiesel and changing our fleet to a more to a greener fleet. And I do hope that as we continue to have green fleet discussions, that we look at electrifying the fleet and making sure that we are putting as little carbon into the air as possible. And I think you know that. So thank you, Director Baker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Other questions? Director Baker, I just wanted to ask you a question. Since we're talking about diesel here, I presume that this effort is probably directed more for our heavier equipment, that at this point, we don't have any other available alternatives. Maybe our lighter weight vehicles, we might have some electric alternatives going forward in the future. Is that accurate?
That's correct, Your Honor. When you look at our vehicle fleet, the city fleet, we've got everything from dump trucks to motor-based equipment, things like generators. We've got everything from fire apparatus, dump trucks, big stuff that runs on diesel powered to make them go. We also have a smaller component of the fleet, about 120 vehicles that are what we call the light duty fleet. That would include your vans, your pickup trucks, your sedans, things like that. Those are the white vehicles you see around City Kalamazoo logo on it. There are some opportunities within the light duty fleet to look at some alternative vehicle platforms, such as electric. However, many of our groups are 24/7 response, and there are at this point still some challenges with that. So I'm not going to let that stumble us up. But there, to answer the question, there are opportunities for electric vehicle utilization within the city's light duty fleet.
Appreciate it. Commissioner Pradel.
Hey, Director Baker. For our public safety fleet, do those vehicles refuel at Stockbridge?
Correct. So all the city's fleet, including public safety, refuels. We have 2 refueling locations. That is Stockbridge, and we have a refueling location at Harrison.
Any other questions for staff on this item? So Commissioners, the request is to approve a contract with Kalamazoo Oil for a pilot term contract for biodiesel in the amount of $125,000. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Urban.
Or
Support by Commissioner Cunningham. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Moss, please call the roll.
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Thank you, Commission. The motion passes. City Manager Ritzma. You're muted, Manager Ritzma.
Thank you. Approval of an FTE allocation for the new position of Victims Advocate / Social Services Coordinator. And I'd like to ask Chief Coakley to just provide an overview of this position and what it will mean for the department and for the city. Thanks, Chief.
Nice to have you here, Chief Coakley. Floor is yours.
Thank you, City Manager Ritzma. Thank you, Mayor Anderson. Thank you, leadership. Vice Mayor Griffin, thank you. City Commissioners, thank you. Good evening to all. I would like to take this opportunity tonight just to refresh your memory of a position that I've talked about back in 2020 and leading into 2021. And now the allocation presents itself to ask for that. And so I'll just start right now with Deputy City Manager Chamberlain. If he could bring up the PowerPoint, it'd be great. Thank you so much. And so moving forward, leadership, I have expanded the title. If you recall, when this first came out, I talked about a social service coordinator. But through research and going through best practices and listening what's going on across the country, it is expanded to victim advocate. And I'll get into a little bit about what I mean by expanding the title to victim advocate social service coordinator. But what I think today is that this particular FTE is the right treatment for Kalamazoo. It's the right engagement for Kalamazoo. And with our support, it can definitely be that in itself. Next slide, please. So what you see in front of you here is a slide about defining the work. Why do we need this full-time employee here at Public Safety? So we know in 2020 that we responded to over 120,000 plus calls for service. Here in front of you, you have 6 areas of out of those calls. In these particular areas are about victimization, homicides, non-fatal shootings, suicide attempts, our crisis intervention teams and those calls, fatal fires, fatal traffic crashes. So this is just a snapshot of 1,056 calls for service, okay? That does not give you the number of victimization those calls for service are including, because there are multiple victims. One victim of a shooting can have multiple layers of victimization through his or her family. So this is just a snapshot of showing you where we're defining the work and where we need to focus this position to in our calls for service. Next slide. So as you know, we at Public Safety, the basis, the tenets of our work is based out of the 21st century in policing, okay? And the recommendation out of that is that law enforcement should engage with community on approaches on planning and introducing and responding to crisis situations in our city, okay? And these often are complex factors and issues. We cannot do it alone. Public safety cannot do it alone. City of Kalamazoo cannot do it alone. And so we must include those multi-layers of others in our community. And so we must include other departments, including the mental health response teams, professional social workers, crisis counselors, all of us included in a collaborative effort in order to bring victimization and those in our community that are suffering such as things as trauma to mitigate that situation. This model can help us, again, mitigate that through our community collaborative effort and working with others in our community. Let's say, for instance, like working with our social service partners and our community partners, such as Isaac and Dr. Davis. And she and I talk about the Black and Brown Collective and how we can use those men and women in mitigating trauma with people in our community that are suffering from victimization. Next slide. How do we put the program into action? This particular position will be the sole point of contact for for public safety for the community at large. This person would act as a liaison for the county, for state agencies and social services. Okay, they would take in the referrals and refer those folks that are in crisis. Because remember, as I've spoken many times, those most vulnerable in our community are the young, the elderly, and those in crisis. And this would particularly be able to give those folks an opportunity to be able to mitigate through their situation. Now, this sole person of contact would certainly help the community, because when people are in crisis, when people are dealing with a situation, they don't want to be given a number or an address for them to get to in order to get their help. This person, this position could certainly mitigate and push them toward the area where they need to go. Advocate for victims of violence. In this particular situation, many people, their voices are silenced because of victimization. Follow up with crime victims. Are you getting the help that you need? This position could certainly do that. And this, for me, is a big one. Analyze the data to identify repeat calls for service. Here at Public Safety, we often get on certain days. What we found is that places in our community often have people of crisis calling 911 for services constantly. But as we can scrub through that aggregate data through those calls for service, we can already have those services available at that location prior to the call for service. For instance, an EMS availability for folks to be transported, or social services for people to have in a particular location because they need those services. Next slide. And so how would it work? The victim advocate social service coordinator, again, would be that single point of contact. You can see what areas I have here that are in need to provide for services for those victims in our community, for these specialized services to be delivered throughout our community. The victim advocate social service coordinator will operate proactively, reactively to provide needs for services. Here's something else that's special for me, in that what I'm looking for this position to also assist public safety with is to be able to train public safety in areas of social services that we are not aware of. So train our staffing on those areas of need in the community that we may be missing, that a civilian can see from their eyes and their lenses and their expertise. So that's important. I think also we can find that this particular position would be successful when we know that victims are no longer advocating for themselves within multiple areas of systems that we have in the community, but instead they can facilitate their own ability to focus on their own mental and physical and spiritual recovery, and not worry about where's the case, not worry about where their case is and what is needed in that arena. Many victims don't know about the Crime Victims Compensation Act and what this means and how they can get services in their community. This particular point person can certainly do that for us. Lastly, leadership, I'm not asking for an increase in budget. I'm going to take this particular position out of my current budget. I'm asking for the allocation for the full employee to be placed into the public safety line and budget item. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to present to you the special needs area of our community, to give people that victim advocate social services need, that they need for these specialized services within our community in order to mitigate a lot of other social needs and calls for services. I'm here to open for any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Chief, for being here. Commissioner Cunningham.
You vaguely mentioned this to me the other day, and it really excited me on two levels. One, it's a need. Two, when you mentioned that it will not be an addition to your budget or additional ask to your budget. Those were two things that really piqued my interest. You spoke to some of the things that this individual or that role will look to accomplish. And I know you spoke to domestic violence as being one of those pieces. There's two other things that I really find to be consistent reasons why individuals get taken in or pulled over or other, and that being drug abuse and child support. Is there anything, will this individual role play any components into that? Is there anything you can speak to as it pertains to the drug abuse and child support issues that we often run into in the community?
Well, certainly. Thank you for that question, Commissioner Cunningham. And as far as drug abuse, certainly this position will certainly be able to advocate for those who are substance abused and getting help in the services that we have available in our community, leading them by hand. What I'm looking for this position to do is have a caseload, if you will, within public safety, embedded in our community, within our own public safety department, to lead the community where they need to go, that those who are substance abused. So those who are or have child care needs, or not needs, but child support issues with their background, we can certainly get them help. One of the things that I've done with the Amnesty Day was to bring the state of Michigan into that, because that was also a big need. On Amnesty Day, those who need to get their bruised background kind of corrected, if you will, because that's a long process. That's something we cannot do in a day of Amnesty Day. So I had a person on site from the state of Michigan in order to mitigate people, to set them up with something new, take care of bench warrants and that type of thing, if it could happen, to take care of the bench warrants so they can set up appointments in order to move forward with their background, in order to, instead of looking over their shoulder, if I may use that vernacular, while they were looking or getting the situation taken care of. So, but this person, this particular FTE certainly can work towards both your points of contact there, Commissioner Cunningham.
Thank you for speaking to that. And I'm glad you mentioned even the state. So I worked as a case manager for the state for several years. And oftentimes, we are, as similar to you guys, we're the first point of contact when, and it's not just when they're in need, but when they're in crisis. And there's a distinct difference. And unfortunately, and this is just something to keep in the back of your mind, when it came to our job, we were case managers, we weren't social workers. And there's a distinct difference in that also, because we weren't connecting individuals consistently and efficiently to the resources within the community. And in a lot of instances, we weren't educated ourselves as case managers to those resources as well as we should be. So, there's a lot of bureaucracy. And so the fact that you're able to come in, make a decision and execute, and obviously it's taken 6 months, but I worked for them 2 years ago, and I've been advocating for something like that for the last 12 years. And those type of things still aren't happening. So I appreciate the time and the effort and the energy. And I look forward to working with this individual to, obviously they'll have to iron out a process and policy and procedures and things of that nature. So I look forward to working with them and ensuring that not only KDPS's voices at the table, but also the community voices at the table, and that resources are readily accessible as much as possible. Obviously, we deal with different issues in different parts of our community. So once again, thank you. I think this is amazing, and I'm truly appreciative.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham.
Commissioner Hess.
Hello, Chief Jean Hess, City Commission. Thank you for bringing this to us. This, again, reiterating Eric's comments, yes, indeed, it's a wonderful thing, and it's going to be a good thing for our city. What timeline do you see if this is approved tonight? What timeline do you see for a hire to be made and for this person to be in place?
Thank you, Commissioner Hess, for that question. I am working with the city manager's office and human resources collectively to put together the job description. I see this position in place in the next 6 months.
Other questions for Chief? Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes, thank you, Chief, for this presentation. I have a few questions, and then I have some thoughts, but I'll share those at the end. So I guess I'll just go one by one. So my first question is, and I know you had mentioned this previously, but in that time, has the Department of Public Safety been in any conversation with any of the community-based organizations that already do this work regarding this role, and what sort of suggestions and/or thoughts or concerns did they lift up about this?
Thank you, Vice Mayor, for that question. Absolutely. I have been in contact with community members of this in the area of social services. I have spoken to a few people also with organizations. Just to lift up to your point and to your question, as Commissioner Cunningham lifted up, this position is sorely needed in our community. Something else that was brought out is that there was some advocacy or social, those who are social advocates of the community. And one person said to me that this is exactly what we were demonstrating and protesting for, a position such as this in law enforcement, embedded in law enforcement, in order to move the needle, if you will. That was spoken to me. But I have spoken to people in this lane, in this area of work, and how to craft this, if you will, job description and what it could do for us in this community. So I'm certainly continuing to reach out to folk who do the work. It is not something obviously in my lane, if you will, but I'm open and listening, and will continue to do so until this person is hired.
Thank you. And what is the current training for KDPS officers regarding community-based resources?
Yeah, so thank you, Vice Mayor, for that question. So the current training is where we would send officers to, in particular, let me back up. Our community police officers are specialized in doing that, and we send them off to neighborhood liaison training in order to get them specialized in mitigation, in communicating, in collaborating, finding things about the community that will work and push them to mitigating those circumstances in the neighborhoods in particular. And so as a whole, the operations division sometimes doesn't have the time, those who are in the division don't have the time in order to mitigate longstanding problem-solving issues in the community. So they're directed to the community policing officers, and they're tasked at doing that. And so there are times when they take their information, so it's, they go to trainings such as Train the Trainer. So they bring back information in order to train the operations division on what's seen out there. And what it was particularly interesting and very profound for this particular position, to your point, is what I'm looking for is this FTE, this full-time employee, will do just that in order to give the operations division as a whole 110 people some more training in order to talk about those social service needs.
Okay, thank you. And I'll wrap up my thoughts with the last question I have. So my thoughts are that this type of link is needed. My concerns are, is this better position? Should we be funding the people who already do this work? Because they're the experts. We're talking about domestic violence and counseling. And I'm also concerned about this being limited, right? We're talking about one person for something that's potentially needed for 24 hours a day. Earlier at our committee of the whole, there was a presentation given, and under the heading of project and funding considerations, it was about community needs and whether or not something should be city-led or led by the third party or led by a third party. And this right here, to me, it's feeling more like we should take these funds and invest it into these groups that are already doing this work and figure out how they can coordinate with KDPS, because this is very important and it's very needed. And I'm concerned with having one person being responsible for training an entire department on a vast array. Some of the items that are listed up in the job description are marital counseling, for example. That's a heavy load to put on one person. And I would like to not set something up to bottom out initially. And so what I'm feeling right now is that the work is needed, it's necessary, but we should redirect these funds to, for example, the YW. Where are they at in respects to this? And I'm sure ISK has already been in communication about this, but what about these groups that already do this work? They are the content experts instead of KDPS, this is not your work, but you do have the link, you do play a role in that. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Mayor, could I?
Sure.
Manager
Ritzman, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor, for that point. And the way I was viewing it is a both and. I think we need the position in public safety to help coordinate and build that infrastructure in the community. And so there would be funding to those organizations for capacity building to do the work that we're talking about here in public safety. So I think it's a both and. Someone has to do that coordinating in the Department of Public Safety, and based on current personnel, having someone that thinks, eats, sleeps this every day, every night, I think is critical.
I agree.
Commissioner Pradel.
Hey, Chief, thanks for your presentation tonight, and thank you for hearing us in the community about the importance of this social services component as well. Appreciate that as well. Just had a few questions for you, if you don't mind as well. So this is, I think, a good connection off of what Vice Mayor was asking as well. But from the way I'm hearing it, the person is probably going to be somewhat challenged if they're actually being the social services delivery itself. Like, they're not the therapist providing therapy. The idea is more so that this is the person that's coordinating the people who do that work, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I think that's the part that, like, when I look at it, I shared that concern with Vice Mayor. Like, I'm looking at that, 1,000 plus, just the instances that you listed off with data, like car fatalities and suicide attempts and all that sort of thing. I mean, my wife is a therapist, and she can see maybe 8 people a day, and let me tell you, like, most of those people she sees every week or every 2 weeks or whatever, so you can only have so big of a caseload. And so I could see where that would get incredibly overwhelming. Yes. And so I think, like, the role that this person can best play is by coordinating those individuals that I just wanted to verify that to make sure I understand correctly. I also want to just check as well, I wonder if you could just share a little bit about mobile crisis response and the work that organization does as well with, I believe it's just people under 18 or under 17 here in the community as well.
Yeah, and so we have the ability to call a mobile crisis. We've also have collaborated with ISK as well as a couple other agencies on that in particular when public safety responds to a situation and people are in crisis and they're victims of some type of situation and they need some type of service and they need it now. And what we can call in the service to have them come in to mitigate and to speak to the issue of need and where the community can be fed their need at that time and that place. In particular, and if I may add, again, with this particular position, oftentimes in the past, when we come across these types of situations, we have in the past given a number to, or an address to, or an organization to a citizen in need. And when a person's in crisis, this is not the time to pass a phone number. And the social service victim advocate coordinator can then be that particular conduit in order to transfer not only information, but the contact and call in the service for the person in need, that victim, to a place that where they're at, instead of them going to them at that time when they're in need.
For sure. You know, I was going to mention as well, I mean, that mobile crisis response program, 24/7 program with youth when they're in crisis. And, you know, it's a spectacular program. And in fact, we have more individuals trained in that in our county than anywhere else in the state, and probably in the region, or if not the country, per capita for the size of our county. And, you know, I know firsthand because my wife was one of the responders for a long time, and the ability to de-escalate the situation.
Yes.
You know, they would go out with a police officer and, you know, try to calm the situation, provide the family resources and whatnot. And I would love to see that emulated with every response of crisis that we can possibly do, because that is a model program. And I don't think we talk about that enough and raise that up enough about the impact that that's had on youth in our community, and that can continue to have if we double down on it. And along that lines, you know, as you're continuing to think about the social services integration into public safety and the work that we do, I just can't emphasize enough, you know, just so you can hear, you know, one of my big concerns is our youth, you know, and I know it's a concern of yours, but I just, you know, when you see these instances where you're watching body cam footage of traumatic incidents happening and little eyes staring out of the windows, or, you know, on the sidelines, 90% of brain development will happen for a child by the time they're in kindergarten, you know, and it is so critical, especially for our tiny folks, you know, that they have urgent wraparound services and they need it 24/7.
Yes.
And it's not just when they're in crisis, because, you know, when a traumatic incident happens, like a shooting, and I know I'm just preaching to the choir here, Chief, but when those kind of incidents happen, you know, a lot of times they're not going to display, you know, a crisis type situation themselves. They're just digesting, trying to process in sensory overload what they just witnessed or what they were just a part of. And it might come months later. But if we can, as a community, wrap ourselves around these youth, the second that it happens, you know, the next day, the next morning, you know, we can prevent crisis from happening, you know, later in life, or, you know, the impacts of brain development that are happening when they're really young. So I would love to see more of that if it's possible, in providing that 24/7 support beyond mobile crisis response, you know, because again, those youth, they're not going to display the crisis in those moments, but they will later if we don't deal with it first head on. And the other part I just was going to share as well is that, you know, one of the things that crosses my mind a lot is you hear about the impending mental health crisis. It's already unfolding before us because of the pandemic. Yes. And, you know, one of the things that my wife tells me all the time is that our first responders are very high on that list. You know, everybody from EMS first responders, and, you know, they are really struggling right now. And, you know, one of the things that I hope we, you know, maybe you have a chance to consider as well is just how we respond and support those people who are responding and supporting other people, and making sure that they have the mental health resources and support they need to be healthy and thrive, and, you know, to have the mental clarity to do this difficult work as well. And so, you know, I just want you and your team to know that you guys are constantly in my thought in that regard too, because I know the trauma is, you know, beyond just those who are part of the critical incidents. You know, it's you guys as well. So
Thank you, Commissioner Fredo.
Commissioner Urban.
Thank you. Well, Chief, I'm glad to hear that you're following up on this promise that you made last fall. I think that we're putting an awful lot of load on one person to start with, but that's where it starts. And I'm just so glad that you're starting it. Now, what I'm hoping you'll be willing to do is to come back and visit with us, say 6 months after this person is hired, and tell us what you've learned and what more you need, so that we are maximally effective with whatever we do. We cannot do this by ourselves, but we sure can maximize the effectiveness of that person by multiplying his or her contacts with others. So tell us how it's going and what you need in 6 months, and we'll be ready to be listening. Even if whether I'm here or not, the rest of us will be here.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban.
Yeah.
Commissioner Cunningham.
A couple of things. One, doubling back to the Vice Mayor's inquiry. I think the same in that I don't believe that they'll be doing necessarily the direct provision of whatever issue that they may be dealing with, as much as they'll be sending out the resources, sending out to other resources. I think the other component that is vital within that is if they have that particular skill set of social work, then they should be able to identify and evaluate processes within the agency, KDPS agency, that may be tweaked or changed, what I like to call low touch, high impact opportunities, where you just do a small tweak and it's providing so much more assistance in whatever capacity. So I think that's something that I will look for and hope that this role can bring out. But additionally, to my colleagues, since we have Chief Coakley in attendance, two things that I wanted to really highlight. One is that that we will be in contract negotiations, union contract negotiations towards the end of the year. And I think it is important that we actually have a work session in advance of that before they start their process, so that we can get in alignment on potential changes, if any, or expectations that we might have or want to see going into these union contracts. With everything that's been going on climate-wise, it may be interesting and tough this year, but we hope that we all can work, play well in the sandbox together and figure it out together, because we're in this together. The other thing I want to highlight, kind of in the same vein, is that I will be having hopefully a meeting with our attorney's office relatively soon, and even I'm assuming with KDPS too, around just prosecution. What does this process look like? Is there some ways that we can improve the way we go about that? I know I heard some interesting things coming out of our county's courts that really intrigued me. So just look for that on the horizon, that there might be conversation around that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham.
Good points. Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions for Chief or anyone else on the city team as it relates to this? So I'm not seeing anybody at this point. I just want to say, Chief, thank you very much for coming and having this discussion. I believe that this is the beginning. This is not the end, of starting this work. But I also just want to remind folks, and I hope I'm not getting ahead of you, Chief, on this, is that my day job is at ISK, and I know that your team has been having extended conversations with folks who are on that 24-hour emergency response, kind of calendar here at ISK. And I was just involved in some emails here today talking about that work, which is starting now in terms of being available to respond to calls. So we're not, your department and led by you is not sitting and waiting for somebody to get hired in a few months to get started on this work. It's already happening. And I think a term that comes to mind for me when we talk about this is this idea of a warm handoff, that in real time, there is a focus to connecting people, to that broad array of community resources. Obviously, this is not a job this one person will be able to do by themselves. So thank you, Chief, for your work.
Thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor. The motion is approval of an FTE. This is a reallocation within the budget of KDPS for a new position of Victims Advocate Social Services Coordinator. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Cunningham. I saw a hand go up, supported by Commissioner Hess. Any more discussion? Thank you so much, Commission. I don't see any discussion. If none, Clerk Moss, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Pradle,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion passes. And thank you again, Chief, for being here. We have a third item on our regular agenda. Back to you, City Manager Ritzma.
Item H2 is adoption of an ordinance to amend Chapter 24 of the Kalamazoo City Code regarding pawnbrokers, secondhand dealers, and junk and recycling dealers.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Is there a staff report on this?
I do not believe so.
Are there any questions for City Manager? All right. Seeing none, the recommended action is a motion to adopt an ordinance to amend Chapter 24 of the Kalamazoo City Code regarding pawnbrokers, secondhand dealers, and junk and recycling dealers. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Hess, supported by Commissioner Urban. Any discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Moss, please call the roll.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradle.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion passes. Next are reports and legislation. City Manager, do you have a report?
Not this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Next, we have two items under policy items, which is K. City Manager Ritzma.
Yes, K1 is adoption of a resolution supporting the For the People Act, which is HR 1/S1.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. So Commissioner Cunningham, I believe that you requested this be on our agenda. Is there anything, comments you'd like to start off with?
Yeah. First of all, we are noticing on a national level that individuals are having issues with voting. And it's plain and simple. And I think our democracy is dealing with a lot of challenges as it pertains to voting. And we are seeing the suppression of a lot of individuals who are minorities, individuals who regularly probably don't even engage in this opportunity and sometimes may not even have a voice. And so I think this is a good opportunity for us to let our voice be known in support of HR 1, which is looking to increase the ability for individuals to have access to voting and to also eliminate some of the dark money, as they have named it, on a national level. So again, I think this resolution will obviously explain more of itself in detail in the resolution, but the basics of it is around supporting individuals, giving individuals the ability to vote, restricting some of the states from, putting barriers in place so that we don't have to run into those issues such as gerrymandering or other.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. All right. If no one's got any questions in particular, maybe we'll go ahead and make the motion to approve it, and then we can have more discussion about it after that. So the recommended action is a motion to adopt a resolution supporting For the People Act, HR 1S.1. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Cunningham, supported by Commissioner Urban. Is there further discussion on this motion? Commissioner Urban. You're muted, Commissioner Urban.
I just want to remind people that this is a federal proposed legislation. This is a resolution in support of a national bill. Just I don't think that was mentioned in the introductory remarks. This is something many people are familiar with, but a lot of people aren't, and it's just vital for the health of our democracy. Whether this particular bill passes, it needs all the support we can possibly give it. But whatever we can accomplish in this direction, it's just imperative that we do all we can. And as elected officials here, we want to be. I think I'm speaking for. I think I'm speaking for all the rest of us, but no, I'm speaking for myself. I want this to happen. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Other discussion on the motion? Commissioner Pradel.
Sure. No, thanks, Commissioner Cunningham, for bringing this forward. You think about all the work that, Deputy Clerk Moss put in last year to increase the voter accessibility, right? Almost over 6,000 people utilizing drop boxes. There are people nationwide trying to reel back that ability. There are people nationwide trying to reel back the ability to place something as simple as a postage stamp that we know, really helped people throughout the pandemic. If you were an elderly person who was homebound, if you were a college student who didn't have easy accessibility, buy a postage stamp. All those different things, are systematically being, or attempts to roll that back. And so there's a reason this is HR 1. It's that important of an issue. So I'm glad this is brought forward, and I'm glad we can hopefully support this tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Commissioner Cunningham?
I
thought I saw you raise your hand before, but
yeah, I think it would be beneficial just for me to read the actual resolution, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah. Any other discussion at this point then? Okay, seeing none. Floor is yours, Commissioner Cunningham.
Resolution supporting the For the People Act, HR 1S1. Whereas the citizens of Michigan deserve to have their voices heard at the ballot boxes, including equitable access to ballots and a reformed campaign finance system that no longer allows out-of-state dark money donors to influence elections. And whereas state constitutional amendments to end partisan gerrymandering and to strengthen voting rights and ballot access were submitted to and approved by Michigan voters as Proposal 18-2 and Proposal 18-3, respectively, at the November 6, 2018 general election. And whereas current state legislative efforts in Michigan put ballot access at risk for vulnerable populations and walk back many of the popular reforms that have resulted in historic turnout in Michigan elections, as Commissioner Pradel mentioned, whereas elected officials should be truly representative of their constituencies, which can be achieved by requiring equitable and easier access to the ballot box through federal standards around early voting, absentee voting, and redistricting. And whereas dark money and out-of-state donors have overtaken public discourse surrounding Michigan elections, a problem solved by requiring political groups to disclose their largest donors and improving transparency in digital and other advertisements. And whereas loopholes in our campaign finance framework and weak ethics requirements have opened up the door for corruption in government and allowed foreign governments to sway the opinion of voters. And whereas the modernization of voting process and elimination of voter purging would support local election officials in administering safe elections while at the same time erasing the registration and voting process for Michigan residents. Whereas the reform includes in the For the People Act, are needed to ensure safer and more reliable voting standards in the influence of dark money in Michigan elections and restore the ethics and accountability within our government at all levels. And so that's the meat and potatoes of the actual resolution.
Thank you for reading that, Commissioner Cunningham. Any other discussion? Commissioner Knott.
Yeah, thanks. So I guess a quick question, and maybe it's for you, Commissioner Cunningham. What do we want to do once we go ahead and vote? I mean, what's the next step? Are we going to send some sort of communication to Congressman Upton's office and to our U.S. Senator?
Elected official. I know that Sean McCann has already presented it on a state level. So for us, obviously, it's our federal level individuals who represent us. But I think it's beyond just our local. We want to at least make sure that all of our Michigan representatives on the federal level has access to this information and understand the importance as we see it for our community here in Kalamazoo.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. See no, Commissioner Cunningham.
And I just want to highlight, considering this question came from our expert as it pertains to those type of advocacies, any other information or things that you can think of that might be cutting edge as it pertains to this, that to get it out, please let me know. Thank you.
Yeah, that was definitely a question that deserved an ask afterwards. So thank you once again. Seeing no other discussion, Clerk Moss, will you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners. The motion passes. We have a second item under policy items. City Manager Ritsma.
Yes, K2 is resolution opposing Michigan Senate Bill 218.
Thank you, Manager Ritsma. I know Commissioner Knott, you had asked this be placed on our agenda. Would you like to help us with some information on this resolution?
Sure, I'll go ahead and give us some background, and then I know that Commissioner Hess probably has a few things to say as well, as she recently testified and provided some statements to the Senate Education and Career Readiness Committee meeting that occurred a couple weeks ago. So Senate Bill 218 is perhaps the hardest or the harshest in a wave of state level anti-trans legislation aimed at barring trans athletes from playing sports. Senate Bill 218 is part of an overt, coordinated multi-state attack on the most vulnerable young people, not only in Michigan, but across the country. There are currently approximately 30 states that have introduced some form of this bill this year alone. This crusade against trans athletes has been the most successful effort to introduce transphobic discrimination into state law, specifically after numerous states failed to pass larger scale bathroom bills and puberty blocker bans in recent years. Senator Tice, the bill's sponsor, has helped to create a manufactured fear that politicians pushing these unconstitutional and harmful bills hope will be representative of a too swiftly changing culture. And frankly, I believe it's simply a wedge issue to drive between voters of one party or another. Commissioner Cunningham just talked about dark money. It's no surprise to those of us that are following these types of anti-LGBTQ bills that these efforts are funded by Christian billionaires like Chick-fil-A's Dan Cathy and Betsy DeVos, who are coordinating a very sophisticated dark money operation to roll back LGBTQ rights across the United States, including these anti-trans sports bills all over the country. Just some background about Senate Bill 218. It's my opinion that it's both harmful and discriminatory against trans youth by barring them from participating in school sports that they love. As a former high school athlete, I believe that this is a single example. As a former high school athlete, there's not a single example from when I was playing sports to the research and the communication that we've done in the recent past of cisgender students facing harm by the participation of trans athletes in school sports in accordance with their gender identity. Additionally, Senate Bill 218 would be in violation of Title IX, which bars discrimination against transgender students in education and educational activities. It would directly impair the ability of trans youth to participate in sports, and unfortunately, it would add to the stigma that they face on a daily basis. As a nation, a long time ago, we decided that discrimination is wrong and that everyone should have the same opportunities to succeed in life, and this definitely should include our trans youth. Kids learn a lot of life lessons from sports, and I think that Commissioner Hess will talk a little bit more about this, from leadership to confidence, self-respect, and what it means to be part of a team. And school officials shouldn't treat a transgender female as a girl between the hours of 8 and 3 p.m. and then treat her like she's a boy when sports practice starts. It's deeply hurtful to the student, and it disrupts school policies of treating all kids fairly. Local schools across the nation, including here in Michigan, already have created policies to protect transgender youth and ensure a level playing field for all students. And these policies are working. Blanket bans on transgender student athletes undermine local efforts. For all of your awareness, our Michigan High School Athletic Association has a policy that's been in place since 2012. They're against this piece of legislation. And in the last 5 years, 10 students have competed in Michigan high school sports. 10 trans students have competed in Michigan high school sports, again, in the last 5 years under the policy that was adopted by the MHSAA. So just a couple of other comments. This bill, as I mentioned, it's a coordinated attack. I think that it's more about politics. It's a solution in search of a problem. There was a hearing that I mentioned that occurred a couple of weeks ago that I elevated Eugene, that Commissioner Hess participated in on behalf of the opposition. And if you watch that committee hearing, you can find it. I can help you out. But the folks that were supporting this bill all were from out of state, all used, tropes and generic anecdotes as it relates to the harm and the number of scholarships and money-making opportunities that cisgender women are losing out of because of transgender athletes. Jean did a phenomenal job countering some of the message, and unfortunately, the opposition was only allowed 2 folks to testify, and the chair, who also is the bill sponsor, abruptly pulled the plug on the committee hearing. What we believe is going to happen is there could be potentially another committee hearing with no testimony offered and just a vote. It would then go to the full Senate floor. My intelligence says that as of right now, the Michigan Senate doesn't have an appetite to move this bill because it's simply about politics. My intelligence also says that the counter committee in the Michigan House, the Education Committee in the House, doesn't have an appetite to hold any hearings. But I think, as you know, that I wear 2 hats as the Executive Director for Equality Michigan, it's been important to get local bodies to speak out against this type of hateful legislation. It's no coincidence that it's now Pride Month here in the state of Michigan and across the United States. And so in speaking with Commissioner Hess, we decided to go ahead and bring this before you for consideration tonight. Jean, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, she's trying to find the unmute button, Commissioner Urban.
There we go. Sorry. I do have something to add, Commissioner Knott. I want to thank you for making me aware of this hearing and the opportunity to give my testimony I'd like to provide some of it here just so that you can understand the emotion behind a lot of this and the meaning and purpose behind it for athletics in general. So after an initial introduction, I said I come before you today to strongly oppose Senate Bill 218 from an educator's perspective. I stand with my fellow athletes, Billie Jean King, Megan Rapinoe, and Candace Parker, in opposing any bill that will ban transgender women and girls from women's sports. If participation for nearly 50 years, and Title IX was enacted nearly 50 years ago, has taught me anything, it is that inclusion is a right that produces positive educational outcomes for those who have a passion to play games. The greatest educational outcomes from involvement in organized sport, in addition to inclusion, are teamwork, commitment, leadership, confidence, and fitness. We are speaking about the whole athlete, not only her physical, but her mental, emotional, and her very sense of what some may call her spiritual self. The NCAA was my governing body as a Division III coach, and then they have said that they will remove lucrative championships events from any state with discriminatory laws, and SB 218 is discriminatory. Additionally, the governing body of the Michigan High School Athletic Association, as Commissioner Knott noted, also opposes this bill. Allow the governing bodies of the state and national associations to legislate these matters. Let us remember that K through 12 and intercollegiate sport is about educational opportunities and not major league contracts, so often sought by our male counterparts as an outcome of their participation in sport. I can imagine no greater lessons than those learned on a team that embraced such values of inclusion, whether it was a team that included a transgender athlete or competing with a team that included a transgender athlete. I would like to remind you that literally competition means to work with rather than against, and that the lessons of inclusion, dignity, respect, and cooperation are sorely needed in our world today. Lastly, as a professor at Kalamazoo College, I both taught and advised transgender students. Not a one would have taken on the burden of such a life-challenging decision only for the ability to compete in sports. However, I would guess that all of them would have relished the opportunity to be a part of a caring, supporting, life-affirming network that participation in sport can provide. I closed with my favorite quote from Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. I ask you to listen to the voices of the opposition today and to allow our transgendered sisters to feel the dignity of your vote. This is about so much more than sports. This is about equality, it's about equity, it's about dignity for all. So I appreciate your willingness, Erin, to bring this forward. And I don't know if you are also going to plan on, and I also know that the city of Detroit passed this very same resolution. So I don't know if you were going to plan on reading it.
My plan was not to read it, in part because a number of my comments were just reshaped portions of the resolution. I will to answer the question that I posed to Commissioner Cunningham. If this passes, I'm wanting us to have the city manager send communication to, Senator Tice's office, to the Committee for Education and Career Readiness, as well as both Senate and House leadership, and to the governor's office.
Thank you very much for your leadership on this, Commissioner Knott, and for reading your statement, Coach Hess. I appreciate those heartfelt words, and I'm glad we got to hear them here in Kalamazoo. Other discussion or questions about this topic at this point? Then I'll go ahead and ask for a motion. The recommended action is a motion to adopt a resolution opposing Michigan Senate Bill 218, known as SB 218. Is there a motion? Motion made by Commissioner Urban,
I'll support.
supported by Commissioner Knott. All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Moss, please call the roll.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradle,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion passes. At this time, we will hear comments from commissioners. Commissioner Urban.
I muted myself when I tried to unmute myself. No, I don't have anything to add this evening. I've spoken with passion on what I needed to say already, so we can move right along.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Commissioner Cunningham.
No comments.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Commissioner Knott.
We'll start by saying thank you to every one of you for supporting the resolution to oppose Senate Bill 218. It speaks volumes that as a body, we're sending this message to the legislature. Again, this is a solution in search of a problem. And if you would have heard the testimony a couple weeks ago, the just absurd, hateful, exaggerated testimony. And then in my work, the work that we do with trans youth, it breaks your heart. I've had a couple of conversations with Commissioner Hess offline where I can feel just her frustration and passion and anger. And it means the world to me that you all voted in solidarity with us this evening. I guess I mentioned June being Pride Month. I'm surprised we didn't have a Pride proclamation. I get asked by the media on a regular basis things related to Pride, and I come across maybe as Eeyore because I talk a lot about, when we sweep up the glitter and we're done drinking beer with a really bad stereotypical name and we have our typical Pride celebrations. I know that they're a little bit hybrid this year, just coming out of the pandemic, but there's still a tremendous amount of work to be done. And I think far too often, we forget about the fact that Pride, really started as a revolution by trans women of color because they were sick and tired of being discriminated against, picked on by law enforcement, and far too many people, even from corporate America right now, every store and every banner I get on my computer is some store trying to sell me a rainbow, or now the modified rainbow, the more inclusive rainbow colors. And I would say to corporate America, but what are you doing to ensure that the Equality Act passes? Or here in Michigan, the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act is finally modernized to include sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. Conversion therapy is still legal here in Michigan. Gay kids all across Michigan can be tortured simply because they're gay. It's junk science and it's still legal. And I could go on and on and on, but again, it is Pride Month. And if you are attending a Pride celebration, either online or in person, go ahead and have a good time. But remember that after the party, there's still a lot of policy that needs to be done. And we need all of our allies to ensure that we're moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Knott. Very thoughtful comments. I appreciate that. Commissioner Pradle.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to start off tonight by congratulating our most recent 2021 grads, Phoenix and K Central and Norix, including Vice Mayor's very own son, Ryder. I'm sure you guys are very proud to have two Kalamazoo Central Giants out there and doing great things in the world. So congratulations to you guys, you and Ed, and to all the graduates who, really weathered the last couple of years that I'm sure have been incredibly challenging and frustrating to spend half of your high school career effectively behind a screen and, having proms in your parking lot and those sort of things. So wish everybody the best with graduation, what's next in their lives. Continue to make Kalamazoo proud, and hope everybody always calls us home. Also just wanted to share something as well. If you look at our schedule calendar for our city commission, the 53rd city commission, we have exactly 10 meetings left together as the 53rd City Commission. A number of you maybe saw the article mentioning that formerly, I know Commissioner Cunningham, you had mentioned a while ago that you weren't planning to run. Commissioner Knott, that was the first I had heard that you weren't running, and just want to thank you both for your service. And let's make the most out of these 10 remaining meetings together in the work that we do here and beyond, because these are times where I feel like you can kind of just shrivel up because it's the pandemic and keep leaning on that as a crutch. But I think this is an opportunity in our discussion during our committee of the whole meeting this afternoon, that this is an opportunity for us to really dig our heels in and really solve some significant problems, and just go big with this federal stimulus dollar, and really innovate and think about how we can be the community of the promise and truly lead not only this region, the state, the country, and be somebody that people look to figure out how we solve these great problems. So, I hope we use that time wisely together. And I think that says it. But anyways, thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Commissioner Hess.
I just want to begin with just great appreciation for everybody on this screen and that's listening in. This is truly a transformative evening for a lot of us. And this being June, and Commissioner Knott nailed it, it is also Pride Month. But in my strong belief that Kalamazoo is an education city, we have received so much education just this evening. We have been receivers of education. A lot of you have given us education this evening. We've been having conversations about things where we learn. So we had education from Director Baker, and from Chief Coakley, educated us about what's happening here in the city. We had education on from the callers with Isaac asking us to stay true to our pledge to become anti-racist and to speak out on behalf of anti-racism in the community. And now we've had education about HR 1 and about LGBTQ rights. I just encourage us all to continue to educate, but I wanted to, and seek education. And I wanted to really congratulate all of our graduates of both the private and public high schools, of all of our colleges and trades education programs. As you go on into your next steps, hopefully Kalamazoo stays on your radar for being a destination city to live, because I do believe we're a great city. And I do believe that we have some really amazing things to offer our residents. And that said, one of those things is kindness. And I'm sure that David Anderson is he's my inspiration for this, but in this time of election season for City Commission, I would call on us all to increase our kindness and civility toward one another and for one another as we move into the November election and elect our new commissioners and mayor, not new mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Vice Mayor Griffin.
Thank you, Mayor Anderson. I want to start off by thanking or congratulating all of the graduates of 2021. Yes, my baby was one of those graduates, and I'm so proud of everyone. I thought 2020's graduating class, I had a graduate in that class too, but 2021, many of you never even stepped foot inside the building, and I saw what that did throughout the year. So kudos to all of you, and thank you for all of our educators and everyone who took the time with our children this entire time, but especially through COVID. You're definitely appreciated. I want to thank Commissioner Cunningham and Commissioner Knott, as well as Commissioner Hess, for your leadership and the policies that you brought forth. Your comments that you made, Commissioner Knott, really resonated with me because I'm really interested in the work that can be done, right? And I understand performative things, they get attention, but what can you really do to change the outcome? So thank you for those comments. They definitely resonated with me. And to the callers who called in, I wanted to ask if someone from city staff could follow up with Jeremy Turpinning regarding his issue with regards to property management. As we know, housing is an issue that we continuously have to work on, but maintenance of housing is just as important as the people who need to secure or find housing. And some of the learnings that I took away from the Isaac meeting, actually, I really enjoyed that. As someone who participates in anti-racism work regularly, I got a lot out of it, and it made me think about being more intentional around accountability and around the things that we do. So we say we want to be a certain way, similar to what Commissioner Knott lifted up with Southwest Michigan First. We have to not only lead by example, but the partners that we work with also have to, hold some of those same values. So that's something that I took from that. And I look forward to any other trainings or possibilities there are in that space. And one other piece that I just have a question on, and I don't know if this could be answered today, but I was thinking about it as we've been talking about COVID and some of the changes we've had in terms of employment with one of our own, the city manager's office leaving, and then someone from the city attorney's office. With the redistribution of work that took place, I hope, and this is my ask and request, that there was a redistribution of money as well to those people who are doing that amazing work that's taking place for those that are no longer here. So I just wanted to put that out there, and hopefully that is something that has taken place, if not already. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Griffin. Yeah, I was able to participate, not in the last one, but in an earlier session that was sponsored by Isaac. I thought that was a great training. Actually, it was a person from Wisconsin who led that, but I thought she did a great job. And these days, as we are been meeting this way, that was something that was still quite productive, I thought, in a Zoom format. So I want to focus right here at the end on something that I am deadly serious about, and it's a deadly serious topic. And this was brought to mind again by the fact that on June 4th, as we do now going forward on the first Friday of every June, was Wear Orange Day. And that was translated into Wear Orange Weekend. And Wear Orange stands for efforts to end gun violence. And it's the color that Adia Pendleton's friends wore in her honor. She was a young woman who was shot and killed in Chicago at the age of 15, just 1 week after she had performed at President Obama's second inaugural parade in 2013. And this recognition has started officially. I believe it was on the year that she would have had her 18th birthday. And it is specifically called National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Ironically, here in Kalamazoo on that very Friday, we had a young person shot on their front porch who luckily will survive, but a victim of gun violence on a front porch that is under, for whatever it's worth, 6 blocks about or less from where I live. And just so happens, according to the report, that young person was holding a baby in their arms. I guess we can celebrate that the baby did not die. I presume it was a few inches, what made the difference there, nor did this young person, sustain a mortal injury. But we do have a crisis which is unequally affecting some neighborhoods and some folks more in the city of Kalamazoo. And it is most certainly the case that there are a great list of long list of things that have gotten us to this point, and it's a long list of things that need to be addressed in a comprehensive manner over, unfortunately, what is going to take years. But in the immediate moment, I am, for what it's worth, issuing a hopeful call to action for the community. And there are certain tools that the city of Kalamazoo has, and one of those tools is being the first folks to respond when that kind of event happens in the city of Kalamazoo, and do the best we can after the fact. And whether that's providing immediate medical attention, what that is specifically attempting to identify individuals who are pulling the triggers and putting people's lives at risk. But that work is occurring, although necessary, too late in the cycle. And we need a community-led and driven effort. I've had the opportunity over the last bit of time to engage with community folks who are also have interest and concern in what we're going to be doing on the community side to address this issue. And already everyone knows who they are, been engaged in those kind of conversations. I do see that a call went out from Mount Zion asking for volunteers to show up to participate on the community side of things. I think that is a call already for tomorrow, Tuesday. I believe that's at 8 o'clock. But I am asking across the board, whether you are a nonprofit, a business, a large business in Kalamazoo, community organizers, that we come together to make sure that we don't get into a position, it's not difficult to get there, to say, well, look, this is happening across the country. So, it's happening here too. So that's the way it is. But that we bring that community, that Kalamazoo community effort to addressing all the various components of what is leading to this situation that we're finding ourselves in. So, as we talked about earlier in the evening, one gunshot creates all kinds of ripples that affect lives in all kinds of ways. Even if in that particular event, no one is hit by a bullet, that is something that you will remember the rest of your life, being involved in something like that. So whatever we can do to create opportunities for hope and for imagining a better lives for each other, and not feeling like we're in a situation where that is our only recourse and our only way to interact with our community, is something we really, really need to be focused on. So I support all community efforts. I'm going to keep talking about that. It's so important for all of us. To do this work, we're going to have to keep our hearts open. I love you, Kalamazoo. We're adjourned.